May 7, 1998. The red-eye flight AL-4815, en route from Miami to Seattle, crashed near Seattle-Tacoma International Airport, claiming the lives of all 172 passengers and 7 crew members aboard. For 20 years, the world believed that no one survived the catastrophic crash. In 2018, a 49-year-old man named Ethan Caldwell came forward, claiming to be the sole survivor of that fateful flight. Caldwell's shocking revelations about the crash were nothing short of horrifying. Official records confirm that Ethan Caldwell, aged 29 at the time, was indeed a passenger on AL-4815. What follows is Ethan Caldwell's own account of the harrowing events that followed the crash.
It started out like any other flight. We took off from Miami as the sun was setting, and everything felt routine and the cabin was calm as people were settling in. The flight attendants were doing their usual rounds, offering drinks and snacks. Everything seemed normal. I remember looking out the window, seeing the lights of the city fade away. It was a smooth flight, nothing out of the ordinary. I was starting to relax, thinking I might catch a nap. But then, out of nowhere, the plane jolted. It was like hitting a massive pothole in the sky. People were thrown around, and the overhead bins flew open, with bags and stuff crashing down into the aisles. The plane started shaking, and it felt like everything was falling apart. People began yelling, and there was chaos everywhere. The plane's lights flickered. I held onto my seat, trying to make sense of what was happening. The plane dipped, and everything outside was darkness and flashes of light. The noise from the engines and the people screaming was deafening. Then, just like that, everything went black. When I woke up, I couldn't tell if I was dead or alive, and the first thing that hit me was the smell. It was a mix of burnt metal, fuel, and something far worse, cooked flesh. It clung to everything, got into my clothes, my hair, my skin. No matter where I went, I couldn't escape it. As I moved through the wreckage, I started to see things that I'll never forget. There were bodies everywhere, some still strapped into their seats, others scattered like rag dolls. Most of them were in pieces, torn apart by the impact. I tried not to look, but it was impossible to avoid. Some of them had their eyes open, staring blankly at nothing, their mouths frozen in silent screams. I remember seeing a woman, or what was left of her, with her limbs bent in ways that just weren't natural. Her head was twisted almost completely around, but her eyes, they were fixed on me, following me as I walked by. At least it felt like they were. I came across a section of the plane where the fire had melted the seats, and the people in them weren't much more than charred husks. But the most horrific part was that some of them were still moving, just a little. At first, I thought it was just the wind, or my eyes playing tricks on me. But then I saw it. One of the bodies, half burnt, was twitching. The fingers of one hand were curling and uncurling, over and over again, like it was trying to grab something that wasn't there. I knew it couldn't be alive, not really, but it didn't stop. I saw a man slumped against a piece of the fuselage, his face half missing from the crash. He looked dead, but then his head jerked up, and his one remaining eye locked onto mine. His mouth opened, and this low, guttural sound came out. It wasn't a scream, more like a moan, but there was something about it that made me back away fast. It felt like he was warning me, telling me to leave, to get out while I still could. As I stumbled through the wreckage, one thing kept gnawing at me. I wasn't hurt, not a single scratch. Bodies all around me, twisted and broken, yet I was standing there like I'd just stepped off a bus. It didn't make sense, and it didn't take long for the guilt to start eating away at me. Why me? Why was I the only one left standing? I knew why, though. It was that damned watch. I reached into my pocket and felt it against my fingers. Sure enough, it was there. The reason I was alive, and the reason all these innocent people lay lifeless around me. I got the watch years ago from this odd guy I met while I was traveling through some small town in Europe. I don't even remember the name of the place, just that it was one of those out-of-the-way spots you only end up in by mistake. It was at this old, dusty market, the kind of place where you find all sorts of oddities, and there he was, this old man sitting at a little stall. He had these piercing eyes that seemed to look right through you. I don't know why, but I felt drawn to his table. Among all the trinkets, there was this pocket watch. It was simple, nothing flashy, just a small silver piece that looked like it had seen better days. The man told me it would bring me good luck, but there was a catch. He warned me never, under any circumstances, to open the small compartment on the back. Curiosity can be dangerous, he said. You'll bring ruin on everyone around you if you do. I didn't think much of it at the time. It seemed like a silly superstition, just a story to make the watch seem more valuable. But I took it anyway. I figured it was just a cool souvenir. For months before I opened the pocket watch, it seemed like it was more than just a charm. It was a miracle worker. My wife and I had been trying to have a baby for years, but the doctors kept telling us it just wasn't going to happen. We had almost given up hope when, out of the blue, she got pregnant. We were stunned. The doctors couldn't explain it, but we didn't care. It was like all our prayers had been answered. Then, there was my career. I'd been stuck in the same dead-end job for years. No promotions, no recognition. But after I got the watch, things changed. I landed a big deal at work, something that had seemed completely out of reach. It put me on the map, and suddenly, I was being offered positions that I could have only dreamed of before. It all felt like more than just luck. It was like the universe was giving me everything I'd ever wanted. But looking back, I should have known better. Nothing that good comes without a cost. One night when I was alone in my house, the watch in my hand, I gave in. I just had to know what was inside. It felt like the watch was calling to me, whispering my name. I remembered the words of the strange man warning me that it would bring ruin upon everyone around me. But temptation got the best of me. So I opened it, and that's when everything changed. The first accident happened just a few weeks later. I was in a cafe, catching up with an old friend from college. We were sitting by the window when a car suddenly swerved off the road, crashing through the front of the cafe. It was like something out of a nightmare. Glass shattering, people screaming, tables and chairs flying everywhere. My friend was hit by the car, pinned against the wall, but I was untouched. Not even a scratch. I couldn't explain it. Then, not long after that, I was at a family gathering, my cousin's wedding. Everyone was having a good time when one of the old chandeliers in the reception hall suddenly broke loose and fell. It crashed down right in the middle of the dance floor, where a group of guests had been celebrating. 3 people were killed instantly, crushed beneath it. I was just a few feet away, but again, nothing happened to me. I was fine, completely unharmed, while everyone else was either injured or worse. The guilt started creeping in after that. One of the worst incidents before the crash was when I was on a construction site. I was there for work, just overseeing some things, when a scaffold collapsed. It was like slow motion, metal twisting, wood splintering, workers screaming as they fell. 2 of the guys I was with were killed, crushed under the debris. I was standing right next to them, but the falling beams missed me by inches. I didn't even have a bruise. That's when I really started to understand. The watch was causing all this. Everyone around me was suffering, and I was walking away without a mark. I tried to get rid of the watch more than once, thinking maybe that would break the curse. The first time, I threw it into a river, hoping the water would carry it far away. For a few days I thought I was free, but then it showed up again, right on my nightstand, as if it had never left. I felt sick to my stomach when I saw it, knowing it wouldn't let go of me that easily. The second time, I buried it deep in the woods, miles from where I was living. I dug a hole, dropped it in, and covered it up, thinking maybe the earth would swallow it and keep it away for good. But that night, I woke up in a cold sweat. There was this awful feeling, like something was in the room with me, watching. I turned on the light, and there it was, sitting on the floor at the foot of my bed, dirt still clinging to it. I didn't sleep at all after that. The worst was when I tried to burn it. I thought fire might be the answer, that maybe it could destroy whatever evil was inside. I took it out to an old shed and set up a fire in a metal barrel. I dropped the watch in, and for a moment I thought it was working. The fire flared up, hotter than I'd ever seen, and I could hear this strange hissing noise, like something was screaming from inside the flames. But then, the fire just died. Completely snuffed out in an instant, like it had never been lit. And there, sitting in the ashes, was the watch, completely unharmed. Bad things continued to happen, and every time, I was there. Every time I walked away without a scratch, and every time, someone else paid the price. It was like the watch had a mind of its own, deciding who would suffer while I stood by, helpless and unharmed. The crash was the last straw. When I got the call that my mom in Seattle was dying, I knew I had to be there. The doctor said she didn't have long, and I couldn't live with myself if I didn't get to say goodbye. But deep down, I had this awful feeling that something was going to happen. I'd already seen too much, lost too much. The thought of getting on that plane terrified me, but I didn't have a choice. To make sure nothing could go wrong, I did the only thing I could think of. I left the watch at home, locked it up in a safe far away from me. I thought, maybe if I didn't have it on me, whatever curse it carried couldn't follow. But when the plane went down, and I woke up in the wreckage, that damn watch was right there on my wrist, mocking me. I don't know how it got there. I locked it up, I swear. But it was there, ticking away, like it had never left my side. That's when I knew. No matter what I did, I couldn't escape it. The crash wasn't just bad luck, it was the curse, coming back to remind me that I couldn't outrun it. After that, I couldn't bear to be around anyone anymore. I knew I had to get away, to stop this from happening again. I decided to go as far away from people as possible, to a place where no one would stumble upon me by accident. I found a remote cabin deep in the woods of the Pacific Northwest, miles from the nearest town. It was the kind of place where the roads turned into dirt paths, and then those paths faded into nothing. The cabin was old, barely holding together, but it was enough. It had 4 walls, a roof that mostly kept the rain out, and just enough space to keep me alive. To everyone else, I was dead. Officially, I had died in that crash along with the others. My family, my friends, they all believed I was gone. I had to let them think that. There was no other way. They had mourned me and moved on, and I had to stay out of their lives for their safety. As far as the world was concerned, Ethan Caldwell had perished in the wreckage of Flight AL-4815. At first, the isolation was almost unbearable. No distant hum of cars, no voices, just the wind in the trees and the occasional rustle of wildlife. I couldn't even keep a clock in the cabin because the ticking drove me mad. Time didn't seem to matter anymore, just the slow, relentless passage of day into night and back again. And being alone with that guilt started to eat away at me. The cabin became a prison, but it was the only way I could make sure no one else got hurt. Every creak in the night, every shadow outside the window, it all felt like punishment. And maybe that's what I deserved. I'd brought this on myself, and now I had to live with it. But I kept telling myself it was for the greater good. As long as I stayed out there, alone, at least no one else would suffer because of that cursed watch. I spent 20 years out there, trying to live a life of solitude, but the nightmares never stopped. Every night, I'd relive the crash, the screams, the flames, and I'd wake up with the same overwhelming guilt, knowing that my very existence was a curse. I thought I could escape, but I was wrong. A few days before everything went south, I'd helped out a couple of lost hikers who wandered near my cabin. They were in rough shape, so I gave them food, directions, and sent them on their way. At the time, I didn't think much of it. It's what anyone would have done. But now, looking back, I can't help but wonder if they came back, thinking I had something valuable stashed away. Someone broke into my cabin a few weeks ago and took the watch. When I returned from a supply run, the place was trashed, doors forced open, furniture overturned. But the most important thing was missing: the watch. I tore the place apart looking for it, but it was nowhere to be found. That's when the real fear set in. Whoever took it has no idea what they're dealing with. I can only imagine the horrors that will follow if they open it. Every instinct in me screams to stop them, but how? I don't know how to reach them, to warn them before it's too late. All I can do is share my story, in the hope that whoever took it will hear me and understand the danger. But after this, I'm done. I've said my piece. I won't talk about it again. I just hope it's not too late for them and for me.
After Ethan resurfaced, He was reunited with his family, who had long accepted the grim truth of his disappearance. Their shock at seeing him alive was matched only by the confusion surrounding his return. Ethan was subjected to intensive psychological evaluation, with doctors convinced his fragmented memories and erratic behavior were symptoms of severe trauma from witnessing the catastrophic plane crash. Government officials pressed him for details, eager to understand how he had survived when no one else had. But the more they questioned him, the less sense it all made. His body bore no scars, no signs of having endured a crash, no physical evidence of the horrors he claimed to have witnessed. In the years that followed, Ethan's obsession with the watch consumed him. His mental state crumbled as he spiraled further into paranoia, convinced the watch held a dark power. He spoke of unseen forces and whispered warnings of impending disaster, but no one listened. They dismissed his ravings as delusions, the lingering effects of a mind broken by trauma. For more scary horror stories, please subscribe.